Today's idiomatic expression gives us the opportunity to talk about a topic that I've been wanting to discuss with you for a while, Renzo.
Wow, this sounds really important, which is why we just skipped right to it. We didn't even say hi.
We didn't, but let's say hi. Hello,
Okay,
everyone. This
hello.
is just a Spanish phrase.
And this is the podcast, companion podcast to News and Slow Spanish, where we explore the origins and interesting uses of common idiomatic expressions. But enough of that. I'm really intrigued now. Maria, what is this expression and what's the topic you want to discuss?
So the expression is poner las manos al fuego,
Aha.
to put your hands in the fire.
Literally to put your hands in the fire.
And of course, my question is, for whom would you put your hands in the fire for? And the topic is the loss of faith in our institutions in general. Not only the loss of faith in religious institutions, which is happening, but, the loss of faith in academia, science, politics, and I understand that they're fallible institutions, of course.
Yes.
You hear about recommendations by the Food and Drug Administration to consume certain foods, and then with time you realize it was all about lobbying, and they shouldn't have recommended that type of food. So when somebody says a lie, you believe, okay, maybe everything they say is a lie. So I think that's where the loss of faith in institution comes. And then nowadays, I feel nobody pone las manos al fuego for anything. And that's a problem.
Wow. See, I knew you were going to ask me for who you would put your hands in the fire, poner las manos al fuego. But this angle about our loss of faith in institutions, it's so fascinating because I agree with everything you said. Very quickly, poner las manos al fuego, like we said, it literally to put your hands in the fire. In English, while we can derive from context that this means that you have trust in something. In fact, you trust something or you have so much confidence in something that you would put your hands in the fire for them or it. But in English, it's more common to hear things like to stick out your neck for someone or to put your life on the line or other expressions like that. The hands in the fire is a really, Spanish version of this idiomatic expression. But, okay, institutions, loss of faith. I think the expression poner las manos al fuego is really appropriate because what I'll say is that the loss of faith relates to how many times we've been burned by that institution. Burned figuratively, of course.
Yes, exactly, of course. But if, it happens one time that an institution lies and then a second time, then a third time, then you completely lose faith.
Fool me once.
Exactly.
Shame on you. It made me immediately think of the famous quote, John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Yes.
And right now, with the current political landscape, that seems like such a distant time. That call to service, to patriotism, now with polarization the way that it is, I can't think of that quote resonating in the same way.
Well, when you said a quote by Kennedy, I thought I don't think it was Kennedy, or maybe it was the worst fear is fear itself. The worst things to fear is fear itself. So I think the worst thing to lose faith in is faith in itself. Like right now, we're becoming a very skeptic society, which is good. I'm a skeptic.
Skepticism is good.
Skepticism is good, but it's very easy to become cynicist. Where you're like, what's the point? What's the point of going out and protest? What's the point of writing an editorial article? What's the point of complaining what's the point of voting if the elections are rigged? What's the point of reading the newspaper if they're manipulating you? So we do need, as a society, to guarantee the social cohesion, we do need institutions that we trust. Otherwise, it's anarchy.
If you don't have something that you would put your hands in the fire for, poner las manos al fuego, then that lack of confidence in society, in your fellow, person, your community, that erodes at the social order.
Exactly. Why would you have a vaccine if you don't believe in what the doctor says? Why would you vote if you don't believe in the system? Why would you inform yourself if you don't believe in the newspaper? So I make an effort to still poner mis manos al fuego for certain institutions. For example, when my conspiranoic friends tell me, how do you know what you're reading in the newspaper is real? I say, well, at least if they publish a fake news, that journalist is risking his or her reputation because they have to at least fact check 3 times whatever they're saying. That Twitter person that you follow, that influencer, he's not risking anything. He can...
Would you stick out your neck for them? You say you have 100% confidence in them?
In the Twitter influencer? Right. No, not at all.
Exactly.
But in the reputable newspapers that I read, yes, more than I would put my manos al fuego more for those newspapers than for the influencers.
Absolutely.
But still, I wouldn't put my manos al fuego for any.
Yeah, it's a really extreme image, right, of literally putting your hands in fire for someone. And I guess that's a good segue for the origin of this expression. What do you think? Where do you think this comes from?
I have no idea. Bible?
Right. When you guess the Bible, you have a really high probability of getting it right. Well, it does have some religious connotations, but specifically, we're looking to the Middle Ages. And in Spain, we had these tests of faith. Again, during the Middle Ages. And this wasn't only happening in Spain. It was happening in many cultures around the world throughout history. But in Spain, they were known as the ordalías, tests of faith, where someone who was accused of something, for example, theft or, any kind of crime like that, or something, like heathenous or blasphemous, an offense against the church, they would be asked to go through an ordalía, a test of faith. And one of the common ones, basically submitting yourself through something very painful, because if it was believed that if you were not harmed during this trial, then you had the favor of God on your side.
Which makes no sense at all. Because that religion is founded on Jesus Christ, who died at the cross. That pain hurt him.
It's the same concept behind like witch trials where, throughout medieval times in Europe, witches would be like submerged in cages into a river. And if they didn't drown, that proved that they weren't a witch. It was, really complicated logic there. But one of the most common ones, these ordalías or tests of faith, was to ask the accused to hold something very hot in their hands.
Oh.
Often like a piece of iron that was stuck into a fire, and then they would hold this or, touch coals, that are hot. And if they weren't burned by the iron or the coals, that proved their innocence. Again, crazy backwards logic, but that was the ordalía. And so the expression became that if you have so much confidence in someone, you are 100% sure that they are innocent or that they can do something,
that
provide
they can
a
be
service,
trusted,
that they can be trusted.
You would grab a coal and you put your hands in the fire. That is a fascinating and very, very scary origin.
Very scary. And of course, this tradition was not short-lived. Past the Middle Ages, it was, as you can imagine, adopted into the Spanish Inquisition.
Of course.
And like I said, the witch trials that went throughout Europe.
But I wonder if anybody ever wasn't burned by putting their hand in the fire.
No, everybody was guilty.
Unless it's, I don't know, the fakirs, that they sleep in beds.
And they walk through on coals.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess they were the only ones that could prove their innocence. But nowadays, figuratively, we would put our hands in the fire for a very few, people or institutions that have earned our total trust.
Exactly. And we need to get our faith back, especially in democratic institutions, because the moment we lose our faith in the Supreme Court, in the electoral system, in Congress, we are in grave danger as a society.
Yeah, we're on fire.
Yeah, so pongamos las manos al fuego for our democracy.
For each other, for our democracy, local government.
And for human kindness.
Very nice.
Adios.